Hey there, Discover Family Church. Pastor Johnny here, and I wanted to just let you guys know how much I love you. We miss you guys, me and Sarah. We miss seeing you, and we can't wait until all this junk's over and we get to come to church again and give you a big hug. But just know that in the middle of all this, that I'm praying for you every day, and praying that through all this that God doesn't just get you through it, but helps grow you and makes things better in the midst of some crazy times. And we are here for you, and we are loving you completely, even if it is just digitally. I hope you're enjoying the devotions we're doing and the online services. I know they're not a replacement for regular church, but just know that we're doing our best, and we love you very much. I want to continue our devotions in Matthew, and today I want to read a couple verses from Matthew chapter 11. We're going to start in verse 28. It says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I love these verses, because what we see here is Jesus is inviting the people that want to learn from him, follow him, his disciples, to find refreshment in being one of his disciples and one of his followers, to find a refreshment in that, which honestly sort of goes against what a lot of us think of when we think of being a Christian. The imagery that he's using right here is talking about working in the field, really, the yoke and the burden. Those are images from people that would work in the fields, doing very hard work, heavy labor, carrying and picking up heavy things. If we look through the story of that Matthew is trying to tell the disciple, what we see is what he's talking about is the burden that comes from religion. The burden that was handed down from the scribes and the Pharisees, the leaders of the church, that it was this idea of heaviness. We know that Jesus came to fulfill the law, and in the law originally, even in the Old Testament, it was never meant to be a burden to us. It was always, God didn't invent these laws to be a burden, but He wanted them to be a blessing to people that humbly trusted in God. But what we see in the Bible that Matthew talks about, that Jesus talks about, and quite honestly what we see even today in the church, still going on today, is that the leaders, the scribes, the Pharisees, that they had twisted God's law into a way of sort of showing off for themselves, to make themselves look better, and they basically created these unnecessary steps, these things they created to make it harder. And we look in just a couple verses before, like we talked about, the little children, when he says, hey, the little children, want them to come unto me. I want us to be like little kids, like I talked about in the last devotional. They would have learned the same thing from those Pharisees and those scribes, and what they would have learned was that following God was a burden, that it was hard. But Jesus is doing something completely different right here than all of history had done right then. He's basically saying, not only is it not supposed to be hard and it's not supposed to be a burden, but there's also supposed to be relief that comes whenever you follow after him. That religious observances, those are the burden. But following Jesus is supposed to provide relief. It's supposed to refresh your soul. Learning from Jesus, it's more like rest than work. Jesus even talks about, that the meek and the humble are the ones that inherit the earth, not the ones that are always twisting themselves into knots to try to follow after some rules and laws that man created. In fact, so much so that Jesus said that, hey, all the laws can be boiled down into two laws, love God and love people. Loving God and loving people, that's not a burden. But yet, so often we look at our walk with Jesus as this burden. Oh, I didn't do this. Oh, I did this. Oh, I feel the guilt from this. And my thought to you today is this, is how often is that guilt, is that conviction, is that burden something that we've placed on ourselves based on man-made things? And how often is it something that God has placed on our hearts because of what we've actually done in regards to our relationship with Him? This is the only time in the whole Bible that Jesus talks about His own heart. And we all know the word Christian means to be like Christ, but this is the only time where He tells us about His heart. He says, what does He say about His heart? He said His heart is gentle and lowly. I don't know about you, but a gentle, lowly thing isn't generally a burden. It's not something that is hard to deal with. See, Jesus is ready to help and to provide refreshment to everybody who is humble enough to say, I need your mercy, Jesus. I need your grace. In fact, He delights Himself in us when we say, Jesus, you're what I need. And can I tell you, if your walk with Christ, if being a Christian feels like a burden to you, then take a second, pull back, and remember that it's not supposed to be a burden. It's supposed to be refreshing. All you're doing is following after Jesus and saying, I love you, Jesus, and I'm going to show other people that same love. Let's not overcomplicate this. Yeah, there's enough complicated thoughts in here that keep us up at night. But your walk with Him doesn't need to be complicated. Love Him. Love other people. And as you do that, there'll be moments when you feel the conviction of the Holy Spirit. There will be moments when you feel guilty because you know you haven't been living in a way that shows your love to Him or your love to other people. But don't allow man-made contraptions to enforce conviction or guilt in your life. Love Jesus and love other people. Find refreshment in Him today. I love you guys. I'll see you soon.